Connecting to your emotions is connection to oneself. But how do you do that in a world that tells you not to show your feelings? We're told to have control over our feelings. In this episode of the Wellness Champion podcast, we're going to dig into your emotions and how to regulate them so that you're not overpowered by them. Welcome to the Wellness Champion podcast, sponsored by Healthy Transformation Nation. We believe that your health and wellness is determined by your own self-care more than anything else. Join us for each episode when we discover and uncover the keys to self-care in today's complex culture. We enjoy helping others discover the best ways to be well. We'll be visiting the basics for self-care and ongoing wellness that enables you to not only survive, but to thrive. Wellness Champion Podcast. You begin to learn emotions in early childhood, and as you grow, your range and understanding of emotions and your ability to express emotions changes too. We learn through various sources that some emotions are more acceptable and tolerable than others. We also learn that expressing some emotions is safe and builds attachments, while expressing other emotions can be unsafe and can potentially strain or break attachments. We often begin to push away the emotions that are harmful for our attachments and eventually lose the ability to recognize and label them. Learning how to connect to your emotions in a healthy way without judgment is crucial.
So when I was young, I had parents, and they were not living in the same household. So my home base was with my mom, and then I'd visit. I'd see my dad on the weekends. I think it was like every other weekend or something. And when I would go from my mom's house, which was kind of laid back and easygoing and, kind of like just roll with the flow. And then I go to my dad's house, and it was a very different situation where it was a lot more authoritative. It was definitely more on a strict level. And there was a lot more tension and anxiety in that home. So I would go from one home to the other and then back to the home base, back with my mom. And having those emotions of having like that anxiety and having that kind of constriction, if you will, because that's what it felt like, was some constriction with my dad, where I couldn't fully express who I was because, behaviors are acceptable or not, as we were just talking about. And that was something that I really struggled with. I struggled with that at a very young age, and going back and forth between homes was very confusing. So how did I identify? How do I identify the emotions I'm feeling? And my mom would say it was like literally like would take me a couple of days to kind of reprogram me to get me back to that more laid back, easy, relaxed atmosphere and feeling inside. But inside, what I was feeling was a lot of turmoil, because I love my mom, I love my dad, and the two households were very, very different. So trying to figure all that stuff out at a very young age, I had very conflicting feelings. So I had to perform one way with my mom, and I had to perform another way with my dad. Or we could say I was being more like myself with my mom and not with my dad. It all depends on the perspective of how you look at it. And I didn't feel safe within myself because my emotions were all over the place between the two different experiences I was having. And so learning how to actually have those feelings and not have like all this judgment on myself, because that's what I was feeling like. I was feeling constantly judging myself because I was not a certain way with my mom that my dad expected me to be, and I was not a certain way with my dad with my mom,
right?
Yeah, expected me to be.
We know what you mean.
Yeah. So having the expectations of both parents was very conflicting. Trying to resolve those conflicts within, it really never happened until I was much older. So when I think about how powerful emotions are, even starting at a young age, how they really can have a tremendous influence on how we show up in daily life. So for me, I was very conflicted And trying to find that balance comes with obviously age and experience, and having those emotions and allowing myself to feel those emotions without any judgment, and accepting myself for who I was, and figuring out, well, who am I? Do I identify as my mom? Do I identify as my father? And it's really figuring out who I identify as in my own being and my emotions. What are my emotions? Not what my mom's emotions are and I'm picking up on, not what my father's emotions are and what I'm picking up on, but what were mine? And how can I resolve those emotions within me?
Wow. Yeah. And, the fact that we are literally shaping ourselves with our emotions.
Right.
We are shaping our lives with our emotions. Yeah. And so I can see why it is so crucial that we get in touch with that and understand ourselves and our emotions, or through our emotions, I should say. And, so one of the things we want to talk about, 3 things today. And one of the things we want to talk about, the first one is acceptance and compassion. So approach emotions with acceptance and compassion.
Yeah.
The relationship you have with yourself is the most important one you'll ever have.
Right. Right. And if you're not happy being in yourself with those emotions, or even how to identify those emotions, it can be a very conflicting place within you.
Yeah. I mean, and connecting with our emotions, connecting to our emotions, it's powerful, but it can also be overwhelming too.
Yeah, it can be, because like if you're in that conflict, it is overwhelming, because there can come a lot of judgment from that.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to allow yourself to feel the emotions with acceptance and compassion. And it's important to check in with them regularly.
Yeah, I find that has definitely been a great way of connecting to the emotions, is like when I'm feeling okay, hold on. Where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this particular way? And does this have something to do with me? Well, obviously it does, because I'm feeling it. But how does it have to do with me? Is it because someone is saying something to me, or I'm experiencing something in the moment that isn't comfortable, but why is it uncomfortable? Right? What is making
so that requires you
to
be curious,
Absolutely.
to look at yourself and evaluate those emotions without judgment. What's really going on inside, and then you're taking an honest look at your emotional experience, whatever it is you're experiencing,
right.
That you were just saying, and weigh that against your current needs and your desires, and see where that emotional experience falls in relation to your needs and desires.
Right. I mean, when I think about like even children, they're having these emotions, all of the time. And when you look at a child and you see them, especially when they're younger, they have an emotion and they go through it, and then they're back to being happy again. And then they go back to playing, right? Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, how do I get to that point? Back to that point. And
I mean,
you're talking about.
As a child, you're able to accept an emotion, and then you just move on. You might have a tantrum or whatever.
Yeah, when you're like 2, 3, 4, it's like, you just move right through it.
But then children are able to, as children, we were able to move quickly past those emotions.
Right.
Because we accepted them. We accepted the experience.
Right.
We experienced it, we felt it, and we moved through it.
Right, because we don't have the capacity to truly analyze and dissect everything when we're really young like that. And that's why children are such great examples, little ones, of how to work through your emotions, even as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess, the underlying theme there is to treat your emotions like they're going to be helping you.
Right.
They're not your enemy.
Right.
Your emotions are there like a friend, friends.
It's
emotions are friends, not enemies.
It's a navigation in a way to see where you're feeling and what's going on, and appreciating that you're actually having emotions, you're actually having those feelings, because that is a guide, and it can guide you to where you are to start and where you want to go in the path, because you have choice, the path and the direction that you want to take with these emotions. You can either be all wrapped up in it and fall over it and be all in a tizzy, Or you can approach it and be like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And connecting with it and moving with it and through it and then onward.
Right. And so approach with compassion.
Yes.
Approach with your acceptance that, you feel these feelings, and you accept that you're feeling these feelings.
Yes.
And accept the feelings.
Right.
Just acceptance.
Right.
And compassion. Be easy on yourself. And
right. Well, I think about in the compassion part that can be really challenging for a lot of people because we have a, like you should know, you should do, you should be. And the thing about the compassion piece is that if you were talking to a friend or you were talking to your child, for example, how would you speak to them? You would be compassionate, you would be empathetic, you would be kind, and it's the same thing that we need to give that license to ourselves as well.
I love that you brought that up because that's the second thing that we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
The second thing we're going to dig into is checking in with your emotions. Check in with your emotions and approach yourself. Mm-hmm. So you're going to approach yourself about your emotions.
Yeah.
And you're going to check in with yourself like you would a friend.
Right. And that can seem a little odd because you're with you all the time, right?
Yeah.
You're with yourself all the time. But even though you are with yourself all the time, sometimes those emotions, it isn't always easy to pinpoint what is triggering it. And some things can be very surface or some things can be a lot deeper rooted. And when those things happen, it gives you the opportunity to dig in. Well, what it's going to do when you're checking in with your emotions is it's going to allow you to start identifying where they're all coming from. When you're checking in, you're able to identify the emotion that you're feeling and then taking it a step further, which is what we're talking about, is figuring out where it's actually coming from. Where is that source?
Yeah.
Is it something from the present moment, which it could be, or is there something deeper within you that is triggered? Like, I know there's sometimes that I'm feeling things, and I know sometimes my clients as well, they're feeling some things. And it's like, okay, why is this particular emotion really bothering me right now?
So it's really helpful if you are able to step outside yourself.
Yeah. It's just not taking it personally so much. It's seeing it for that feeling and that emotion for what it is. And like we're talking about that check-in, it allows you to appreciate and learn and grow from it. And a lot of times we're feeling emotions that we don't, when we're talking more about the emotions we're not specifically enjoying in the present moment. And so those emotions that you're feeling in the present moment, they may not be as surface as it seems.
Well, that brings up a good point. I tend to do that myself with not only emotions that I find are unpleasant to feel, but also with emotions that are pleasant as well. When I have emotions that I am feeling that I don't like, that I wish I weren't feeling, I approach it the same way. And of course, that in and of itself, obviously I'm going to be not feeling great about that. It's not going to bring me joy to be feeling these emotions, but I do have that element of compassion that we were talking about, where I don't beat myself up for feeling certain feelings. I am enjoying the fact that I'm human, and this human experience comes with all of those emotions.
And one thing that you touched on that I thought was really beautiful was the gratitude piece of it, because in the moments that you're like feeling the joy and the love and you're like, I'm so grateful for this, but it's also taking that gratitude and bringing it into the feelings that don't feel so great, and being grateful that we have those feelings, because that's a compass and a guide for us to navigate through how to get to the other side of those unpleasant emotions, those unpleasant experiences. So I love the gratitude piece of it, because if you approach it from a gratitude of the experience that I'm going through, you're going to learn from it. You're going to grow from it, and you're not going to be stuck in it, because you have the gratitude that I'm going through this experience right now. There's something here for me. This is the check-in. This is something here for me. This is something I can learn from this experience.
Yep.
What am I trying to, you're really literally trying to teach yourself something here.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, I do feel the gratitude for all my emotions.
Right.
You know, I do feel the gratitude for even the emotions that I consider to be negative, or that I don't.
Tough stuff.
The tough stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm in gratitude for that as well. And one other thing that we like to do, and is a real big benefit because it has physical consequences, is to use all your senses to understand what's being communicated to yourself through your emotions.
Right. I definitely identify with that, because I can, if I'm feeling an experience feelings I'm not really jazzed about, I can feel it in my chest. I can feel it in my hands. I can almost feel it like, sometimes it's like a blood starting to boil, if you will, that kind of that feeling when there's some anger, injustice feeling of that coming in right there. But I feel it throughout my body, and it's connecting. And when you feel those feelings, they can be very powerful, and it can be a little overwhelming as well as scary, because you have a lot of power within you. And so having all of the physical things come up, it's just showing where things are out of balance.
Yeah.
And that helps you with the emotions. It helps you, like you talked about, the physical piece of it. And I'm out of balance here. How do I get back in balance? It doesn't have to be a scary, horrible experience. It can be one that comes to a resolve where you're finding the balance within yourself. And I think that's really what it is. It's just finding the balance of those emotions where they're not overtaking you and they're not making you into something that you're truly not, so to speak, but if that makes sense. But just really embracing who you are, accepting who you are, and you're making the choice of who you want to be and show up in that particular moment. It's very powerful how you can shift it from the boiling blood to a peace. And
that brings us to the third thing that we really want to talk about today, and that's just a few tips for getting, for your approach, for your practice of this.
Absolutely.
Ways to get into this practice. A few tips for, getting in touch with your emotions with compassion. And, obviously, we have a few things that we'll talk about now, but
we won't leave you hanging.
But use your creativity and do what works for you. But one thing is to, obviously, we've already touched upon, is listen to yourself as you would listen to others. Right. Another thing is journaling. Set up a regular time to journal.
And there's so many ways you can journal. You can use there's an app called Penzu. You can do it online. You can, if some people don't like to have physical journals and stuff, they'd rather have it online for privacy reasons and stuff like that in the home. Also, you can use a physical journal like we've talked about in previous episodes, where you can really connect. I find that is actually the better of the two. Yeah. And the reason why is because it's coming from your mind in your hand, and it's a physical, emotional connection of writing in that journal.
Yeah. Some people, you don't have to do it every day. As long as you do it on a regular basis. I know that you will find a benefit if you do it on a regular basis. But it doesn't necessarily have to be every day. Just, once a week or something.
You could even do it when you're feeling those feelings.
Just when you're feeling those feelings.
Just when you're feeling the feelings. It doesn't have, and the thing about that I like about that, if you're just taking it from the point where you're feeling feelings that are uncomfortable and you journal about them and you date them, you'll have a record of how often or not it is happening. And that is powerful, because you're able to look back and you're able to see where you were at and the resolve. And is it a pattern? Does it happen over and over again? And if it is, that might be something you want to dig in a little bit more.
Connecting with your inner child.
I love that. Connecting with the inner child. I had a really hard time understanding what the heck that meant for a long time.
Yeah.
And I finally have gotten it where it's kind of like the person inside that wants to go, meh, and just like, yeah, or yay, and jump up and down on the bed, those types of things. That's the inner child, that piece of you that's just wanting to come out, wants to be heard, wants to be recognized, and wants to be accepted as well.
I mean, if you feel like dancing, then dance.
Yes.
If you feel like crying, then cry. If you feel like yelling, then pick a good spot and yell.
Yeah, I mean, crying is such a release. And I have found, for me personally, and I do know some other people, clients that I've had as well, that sometimes laughing and crying at the same time is just a way of purging out emotions. And it is very healing, because it's almost like the little child is laughing, right? Or vice versa. The adult is laughing and the child is crying, or the adult is crying. For me, I find that it's usually the little child that's crying. Yeah. And the adult is laughing, because that's what I've used to help cope over the years, is using humor to get through tough experiences. And that's all fine and good. But now feeling those experiences, having my clients feel those experiences and allowing yourself to cry. And it is the thing about that, like I talked about earlier, is feeling safe within myself. And so allowing myself to cry is trusting myself and feeling safe with myself. And that might seem a little odd, but if you haven't had experiences where you had your emotions in a balanced state, it can feel that way. So that's a powerful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Getting in, as children, you'll notice when you watch children, they are much more free with their emotions, to show their emotions. And as we grow up, we're, like we were saying at the top of this episode, we are taught over time to suppress our emotions, not show our feelings. And so that's why when we look at children, they're like emotional basket cases sometimes, but it's because they're just free to show them.
Right. And the thing about that for me and other people that I've worked with, is that the emotion piece and holding that in can be actually a way toward addiction, because you don't want to feel that stuff and you don't want to deal with that stuff.
Yeah. The consequence can be, when suppressing emotions, the emotions may come out into the surface in other ways.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Correct.
And here's one. Record a video of yourself and then watch it.
Oh, I've done that before.
And one idea is to, every morning for a week, check in with yourself for a few minutes and record it on video. And you could talk about, something you're going through, like a challenge that you're having currently, or just your perspective on life, just whatever it is that you may want to talk about yourself and about your emotions. Just do that for like every day for a week, just for a few minutes. And then at the end of the week, watch your videos, play it back, and see how your emotions evolve over that week.
And as far as doing that, be really honest. Be really honest with yourself about how you're truly feeling, because I know for some people that can be a little challenging. And when you're in front of a camera, you want to, not maybe look so messy, if you will, right?
Right. Because the whole point of this exercise is to observe what might not be apparent to you readily from the inside. So when you look back on it, you're going to see it from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it. So be honest.
Be very honest.
You must be honest with yourself.
Yeah, it's important.
Draw your emotions, or draw a body map. So draw an outline of a body.
Yep.
And use colors, patterns, or images to illustrate where emotions lie in your physical body. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is that, if I'm nervous, I might feel a pit in my stomach. Or if something is really serious, I might feel a weight on my chest. That sort of thing. So you draw your emotions out as how you feel them in your body, as where you feel them in your body, or where you think where you identify with them being.
It's almost like I think of it like the colors of the chakra, and using those as a way of the connection. That's how I do it. And when I'm feeling stuff in my chest, it's really like a heavy pressure, like you were talking about, and I want to label that a color, and then I can see that color within my body. and it's very powerful, and you can learn over time how to change that.
Yes.
Through this exercise. Great tip.
How about creating space for emotional rest?
That's one of my favorite things to do, is to create a space where I can go and relax, be myself, just accept everything about me in that moment. No judgments, no
Right.
I should have, could have, would have been, and all this, just being in a very beautiful space.
Yeah. I mean, because emotions do take a lot of energy.
Oh, yes, they do.
Especially if you're working through something, or if you're experiencing something, a major life event or something like that. Taking that time, because that can be like an intense workout. I mean,
Absolutely.
have you ever felt physically drained after an emotional experience?
Absolutely, 100%. Especially if it's something that I've worked through and then come out the other side of it and gained tremendous insight. It is very draining. I'm like, I'm ready for bed. Let's go to sleep.
Just like when you're working out your muscles and you need some downtime for those muscles to rest and recover, you need that for your emotions as well.
Right. And when was the last time that you felt that way? That you actually went through that process and felt that? That's something to think about.
Yeah. And it can be whatever. It could be even like, some a favorite activity that makes you feel relaxed, like, I don't know, cooking or baking or reading a book or something like that. Just anything that just lets you just have some downtime.
Yeah, I love meditation too. It's always that's always another great one, is meditation and just being still.
We have to mention too, and this is
Okay.
something that sometimes we need additional support. Sometimes we need to seek out a professional, someone who will better understand intense emotions, who will better understand, how to help you get to their source and how to learn to cope with them.
Right.
And so a big thing is for us to recognize when we do need to seek that additional support.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeking additional support is always recommended especially if it's dealing with a lot of trauma, childhood trauma, or just even adult trauma, because there are things that we can definitely work through, process on our own. But when we get into the serious depths of those emotions and the pain of that's definitely a good way to go. And it's really doing yourself a great, what's the word I want to say? You're being your best friend at that point. That's probably the best way to say it, is that you're being a best friend to yourself. And a lot of people have problems seeking additional support because they look at it as that they're weak, or they can't do it on their own. But that doesn't mean that's forever. It may be temporary. Or if you do seek additional support, you might find you might not need it. It's completely up to you. But when I found that seeking additional support, it does make a difference, and that support coming in can help you to move through it and then be able to move on your own. And that's really the goal. The goal is really to be well balanced and rounded within your own self.
And I liken it to the previous example of physical activity, wears your body down and you need that rest period. Well, if you're a bodybuilder, you seek out a professional who would help you with picking the right exercises, the right workout routine.
Right.
It's the same with your emotional health as well. Treat that as if the same way you would treat your teeth, that you go to the dentist.
Right.
So just simply be accepting of the fact that there are professionals there that will help you with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this has been a very emotional episode.
Yeah.
But we've talked about approaching emotions with acceptance and compassion. And also checking in with yourself, checking in with your emotions. Frequently check in with your emotions. And when you start talking about something that evokes a strong emotion, shift immediately to feeling the emotion in the body. So identify those areas of your body where you feel them physically. Describe how the emotion feels and where you feel it physically,
and be patient with yourself.
Yeah, and the other is staying present and think and respond to the emotion rather than simply sitting with it. And after you recognize how the emotion feels, you might take it a step further by asking, if this emotion could talk, what would it say? And what does it want to tell me? This can aid in understanding what your emotional needs are and how you can support yourself. Being with your emotions does not always come easily, and it can take some it can take some exploring several different strategies to find what works for you. And remember, what works for someone else may not work for you, and vice versa, because we're all bio-individuals. So take some time and strengthen the relationship with yourself and connecting to your emotions. And you may find that that's also going to be serving in your other relationships as well.
We invite you to join us at htnforyou.com. That's our community where you'll find others like you who are learning and thriving with self-care and a wellness mindset.